Hi, I'm Owen, the host of the Australian Finance Podcast. This podcast is proudly sponsored by BetaShares, one of the leading providers of ETFs here in Australia. Serving thousands of financial advisors and over 1 million investors, BetaShares manages tens of billions of dollars on behalf of investors right across the country. I'm proud to partner with BetaShares on the Australian Finance Podcast, Australia's premier financial podcast, because there is great alignment in the long-term philosophy shared by both businesses. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Australian Finance Podcast.
Betsy Westcott, welcome to this episode of the Australian Finance Podcast. How are you?
I am well. I am here, which is an achievement, as we were discussing before the show.
Yes, some challenges with sick babies.
Sick babies, that's it. But this is the colour of life, is you just make it work, you roll with it.
You've got to, just like me trying to get technology working for this episode. It's been a challenge, but we are here and we're ready to go. So for our listeners who aren't familiar with Betsy, Betsy's a financial wellness coach. She's a regular financial commentator you'll see popping up on TV screens. And over the years, you've worn many, many different hats in the finance world. So you've got a pretty impressive rap sheet for your career history and all the amazing things you've done to date. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the work you do now, your career, kind of what's been happening apart from sick babies?
Yes, all the great. Well, thank you. Thanks for that wrap. I never intended to be in finance. It was just a happy accident, I would say. But it's so funny when I look back around my childhood and how I grew up and then the work that I do today, it all makes sense, Gem. So fell into banking, thought I was going to be a fabulous hotelier, making beautiful experiences. And then one of my guests was a banker, and he thought if you took people who were really customer centric and, very focused on solving problems for people, taught them banking, you would change the culture of a bank. So he recruited a swag of us and put us through our paces. We all were university educated, but we went on to do further study in finance. So started running bank branches, which was really fun. And for me, it was like just lifting the veil on the world of money, being like, this is how it works. Like the saving accounts, the loans, the mortgages, I could really start to understand them. And that got me really excited because I was like, guys, this is to all of my girlfriends. I'm like, this is how you buy a house. This is how you grow your retirement savings and don't get penalized when you have babies and take time out of the workforce. So sort of started running some little side like tea and finance parties at that point in time. Then went into the world of private banking, which was so much fun. I advised some very wealthy families and individuals, and that was like Disneyland. I was having the best time. And that's when I got qualified as a financial advisor. And then I was really enjoying that and, making good money and having lots of fun. But this little part of me was sort of starting to niggle, saying like, you've always wanted to do good in the world. How can you use these skills and have more impact and really change the world of finance to make it more accessible and make people be able to understand and use money more effectively? And at that point, one of my clients then came to me and pitched this idea of building a brand new bank. And that was one of the first neobanks called Zinja, which sadly no longer exists, but was a lot of fun. So
that would have been a really good learning experience regardless, like just seeing that side of things kind of built from the ground up.
Yes, it was an education like no other.
So steep learning curve.
So steep. We needed a pickaxe to climb. I think it was that steep. And that was a lot of fun. And we went through, getting a bank license, building teams, building processes, launching crowd funds, and really just building that community. From there, I thought I better just check that those tech skills I had learned were actually real. So I went back to Macquarie Bank and did some work with them. And then finally landed as a chief revenue officer for a financial wellness fintech called Future You, which aggregated your banking data and delivered you some insights around your spending, offered you short-term credit to kind of bridge cash flow when you had shortages. And that was really fun. And then that got acquired. So alongside all the fintech stuff, I'd been running this side hustle, just coaching people about money, because in the tech world, when you're building businesses, it's really fun and challenging, but there's not a lot of face-to-face. And that's what I discovered I really loved, is I love helping people, helping couples, helping business owners understand and make the most out of the money, and understand that internal narrative that they have around money. Like, what is it that motivates them? Why do they self-sabotage sometimes? What does a rich life look like? So I had a coaching business, and when the company I worked for got acquired, I was like, oh, I'll just do my coaching business. Over the summer, it was November. We know that nothing happens in corporate Australia from November through to, February. So did that, and then it took off. And I was like, you know what? It's really lovely working for yourself. This is great at this season of life, of parenthood and all of that. So I kept at it. And yeah, I've since built out the Inner Money Journey, which is my business. I help couples, individuals, and business owners, one, get really radically clear on what is it that really motivates them. What does that rich life look like? How they relate to money, and get that really working for them. And then I educate them in the skills that they need to build that outer wealth as well. And it's such a joy.
I love it. And we talk about like the concept of money coaching a lot on the podcast, well, since I've taken over, because people don't know that this is a thing that you can access. We kind of think, well, you're either a DIYer or you're on the other end of the spectrum and you're seeing a financial advisor, which is, costing you often, thousands and thousands of dollars, so much value there. But there has to be that middle ground for the people that need something else. So this is why we love speaking to money coaches, so that we can make sure people know that this is a valuable service.
Oh, thank you. And I think, a lot of my clients go on and get that strategic, personalized financial advice. As you say, there's so much value in that.
Yeah.
But
And the services complement each other really, really well.
Yes. I think my clients then go into that being really empowered and a co-creator of that advice, which means that they not only understand it better, but are more engaged with it and actually going to get the results. Because one thing's for certain is that when I was working in that space with private banking, you'd put these beautiful plans together for people, like delicious, perfect plans.
Yes.
You'd come back and they hadn't done anything.
You'd be like, why aren't you sticking to it? It was like a light bulb moment for me when I started to understand all the mindset and all the behavioral side of stuff. And I was just, I was a financial advisor, and I was going, we're putting together these amazing plans, and why aren't these clients sticking to them? It's because all of the other work needs to happen first before they're ready to actually be able to do that. So yeah, very, very valuable work. But today we are going into a very big topic. So in this episode, Betsy and I are going to be unpacking one of the biggest financial and emotional shifts of our time. So there is a 3.5 trillion intergenerational wealth transfer currently underway in Australia. So that's a lot of big words, and we're going to talk about what that actually means. But pretty much what's happening is inheritances are starting to flow, starting to change hands. And we're going to talk about that. The media talks about it quite a lot. Like, these are big numbers. But what I'm really excited to have Betsy on the show is why I'm really excited to have Betsy on the show is because she's going to bring a much needed human element, human lens to this discussion, because as we know, money is so deeply emotional, it's so personal, and it's very messy when emotions get involved. So while there's these massive numbers and this is a thing that's kind of going to be happening that we all need to be aware of, there's lots of other considerations that we want to chat about. So let's dive into it. And as always, if we do talk about any financial strategies, concepts, and things as a result of this conversation, it's for education purposes only. Think of it as education, entertainment. Always get advice and things for your own personal situation, because we don't know your needs, goals, and objectives. But I think we'll probably touch on as well who are the people that you actually get that advice if this is something that's going to happen for you. So 3.5 trillion, that is a massive number. One that I think most people, including myself, can't get their head around how many zeros that actually is. But Betsy, do you want to break down for us what is that? What is this intergenerational intergenerational wealth transfer. What does it look like? What's happening in Australian households?
It sounds like Monopoly money, doesn't it? When you're like $3.5 trillion. Like,
Yeah. I'm like,
yeah.
I can't even.
So it's as you said, it's already started happening. At this point in time, it's about $120 billion, also a huge number, that is transferring hands every year. The pace of that is going to accelerate over the next 20 years. So by about 2050, that's going to, oh, that's a little bit more than 20 years, but 2040, I think is what I meant to say. So about 2040, that's going to be about $500 billion a year transferring hands,
That's
which
crazy.
is a lot of cash. It's
So
much
this is
cash.
coming from boomers and predominantly probably to the hands of millennials, would we say?
Predominantly coming from boomers, going to millennials. Now, there's a few interesting trends that are happening around there. So typically an inheritance is received a little bit later in life, around 55 to 59. But there's an increasing trend of what's called giving with warm hands. So while you're still alive. Because a lot of parents, grandparents are recognizing that, the younger generation today does face a lot of challenges when it comes to just establishing themselves, buying that first home, being able to educate kids and provide a lifestyle that they grew up with or that they were able to provide for those kids. So about 70% of Aussie parents over 50 right now plan to give at least part of their wealth or transfer this wealth a little bit earlier. So this is like, the beginning of the tidal wave. Now, on average, if you sort of were to disperse that wealth across the average Australian, that's around $125,000 to $150,000. However, that's not how it plays out. It's about 20% of the wealthier families will receive the bulk of that wealth. There will still be an extraordinary number of Australians whose families don't have those means, don't have the ability to pass on this wealth, which is, again, quite a challenging scenario when we think about the socio-economic impact of this, because it really embeds and kind of furthers that wealth gap that is establishing.
Yeah, and it's such a privileged position to be in, to receive an inheritance, whatever size, but there's so many complexities that come with it as well, because it does kind of move that gap. It causes a lot of pressure on the people receiving inheritance, and usually it's coming because you've lost a loved one that you were really close with. So it has so many elements. I always find when I'm providing advice to financial planning clients that have come into a significant amount of wealth, because of inheritance, they really do feel so much pressure on how they use it, and making sure that they do it in a way that, honors that person's wishes and make really smart decisions with it. And it just, there's just so many complexities, but it is a privileged position to be in, but we have to kind of acknowledge it's come from a pretty horrible time generally in somebody's life.
Yeah, and as you touched on so many of those complexities there's feelings of grief. There's also, if this is a large sum of money, particularly if it might not have been expected, there's a huge identity shift that can come with it. Challenges around, am I worthy of this? And are my achievements still my own? And that's something that, can sound a little bit like, nice problem to have, I was going to say a rude word there, but like, oh, you've got money. That must be tough. But, for a lot of people, there is this kind of like, people aren't going to think that I deserve this, or that my achievements are as equal as if I had done it on my own. And there's almost like sometimes a shame around, and like this feeling to kind of, I need to keep this a bit of a secret so people don't judge me, because we're humans. We want to fit in. We want to be part of the community. We don't want to get kicked out of the tribe. And if we've grown up in a particular set of circumstances, and our friends, we all sort of, we're often the average of our 5 friends, and then suddenly we're catapulted into something quite different, that can be uncomfortable. And it can be uncomfortable sharing it with people. And then it's the pressure, as you mentioned, how do I use this money? A lot of people struggle to feel like they actually have the right to do anything with that money. They need to kind of continue the legacy or try and honor the legacy. And in some circumstances, there's a pressure and expectations, strings that come attached with these inheritances. So it is not a simple situation.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many layers of complexity that come with that. And then I guess, there's also the expectations within your own household. So if somebody's received an inheritance and you consider, well, depending on how you manage money as a couple in your household, and one person's got some money coming in, how you then navigate that as a couple, and yeah, the family gifts, whether it's been from an inheritance or warm handover,
Warm
is that what you
hands.
call them? Warm
Yeah,
hands, yeah,
giving the
warm
warm
handover.
hands.
Yeah, and then like we've got things like separation to consider. What are some things that people need to be aware of there?
I think let's talk about the impact of what can happen, and then how much you kind of set yourself up to be more successful. And this is also contextual to your own relationship and your own money dynamics, because those are unique. And this is why I love working with couples, because we know that money and fights about money, whether it's the absence of it or the presence of it, is one of the number one drivers of divorce. So how can we set people up to be successful and then eliminate that as a possible cause of separation? So when there is that wealth imbalance, it can lead to things like power imbalances, where potentially the partner that has inherited the money or has more means behind them can kind of feel like they get like the veto vote, and can gets to kind of dominate when it comes to decision making around how they spend, where they live, how they get to raise children when they retire. Then on the other side, the person that doesn't come from the financial means can often feel inadequate, because let's be honest, often we equate self-worth with net worth. It's an ugly reality, but like, let's be frank, that happens often. So they might feel like their contributions aren't equally valued, or that they can't keep up and they can't match their partner's contribution. So therefore, they shouldn't ask too much, they shouldn't be too much, those sorts of things. Then there might just be sort of class and cultural differences around how we spend money. My husband and I come from fairly different backgrounds, and we laugh all the time, just the inherent ways we're different about money. Happily, we've developed a common language. We have regular check-ins and a shared vision, so normally we can overcome it. But it gets prickly sometimes, I will be honest, because we've just grown up differently. And then there can be tensions, whether that's within the relationship or external, creating pressure on the couple around, how you can enjoy it, what it's allowed to be used for, if there's any strings attached, should I say. And then, so that they're sort of like the main ones that I see there. In terms of being able to navigate this successfully, first you want to be having some really open conversations from the get-go of your relationship, and
ideally from before any of these money conversations are even coming in. You want to be as early as possible having really healthy communication around your money, because if you can't manage $100, it's going to be really, really hard to manage potentially hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that will unite you is if the two of you have a shared vision for your life together. So I'm always talking to my clients around like, what is your vision of a rich life? And I don't just mean money, I mean the whole spectrum. Because money is just
everything.
a tool. Yeah,
Yeah.
money is just a tool. It's part of the equation. It is a fabulous enabler of a lot of these things that make us feel like life is rich. But what is that joint vision, and how are you pulling in the same direction? And then it's around understanding what are each other's roles, how do we view the money, what's going to be the best use that's going to get us closer to that rich life. And if you can get on the same page about that, that's a great start. If you're struggling with that, that is a really good trigger to get some outside help. Whether that's a money coach, whether it's an advisor, maybe an accountant, depending on the circumstances. But don't feel like you need to like nut it out together. It's tricky stuff. We're not regularly given guidance on this, certainly not at school, quite often not from family. And that's particularly tricky if family's the cause of the tension. So get that outside help to really support you in just navigating this path. It doesn't have to end in tears.
Yes. And if it's come from an inheritance, there's probably been enough tears. We don't want to create more with the choices about the money. But I always find that people, generalizing, of course, but people that I will give financial advice to that have received an inheritance, they feel a bit of pressure to move quickly to make decisions, so the money's working, because we're always told, get your money working hard for you and those types of things. But in a lot of cases like this, I think just waiting until the roller coaster of emotions has settled down and you have a clear head to make informed decisions. And I'm big on any financial decision being financially flexible, and it's not always about the most optimal financial strategy and getting your dollars working as hard as possible. It's about making sure that you still have flexibility built in there. So before you go and make any rash decisions, maybe you do just sit that in an account or your offset or somewhere that it's away and you have some breathing time to feel all the emotions that you need to go through and then make some decisions and potentially slowly step into then implementing those decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the one caveat to that is depending on what you inherit. So if it's a cash, and so when someone passes away, hopefully they have a will. Many Australians die without one. So everyone listening, please go do a will. Be a good human. Do your will.
Yes, yeah. And do that for the people that you're leaving behind. So many people say, "Oh, it's fine. They'll sort it out." And I'm like, "No, don't do that to them. They don't want to guess what your wishes were. Do not put people in that position. Just go and do a will."
Yeah, and because if you don't, if there's no will in place or an invalid will and all of that, they then have to apply to the Supreme Court to be able to administer your estate, which is not fun. Like,
No,
not a fun
timely,
exercise.
costly. Just
Yeah.
do your family a favor and just get
Mm.
a will sorted.
Yeah.
And if you're thinking, I don't have assets, chances are you have some superannuation, which falls outside the will, but there's some considerations there. You might have an insurance policy that might be majority of your estate, a life insurance policy. But usually you've got a car, you've got some subscriptions and digital assets and different things out there that is all covered under the will as well.
Yeah. So what happens is most Australians are going to inherit a house because a lot of this wealth is tied up in the family home because property has become so valuable here in Australia. Now, if you inherit a house, first thing you've got to actually work out is it just me inheriting this or are there other beneficiaries? So you might inherit it along with one or two or maybe three siblings, depending how big your house is. Now, there is first thing to work out is what does everyone want to do? And as you mentioned, that might take a little bit of time. That's going to be emotional. Some people might be sentimentally attached. Maybe some people want to cash out and run. Everyone's going to have a different view. So the hardest thing is going to be getting everyone on the same page. But with houses, there is going to potentially be some capital gains tax if you don't sell it within a certain period. So in those scenarios where you're inheriting assets like houses or shares, things that are just not straight cash, it is a good idea to get some advice from an accountant, a financial planner, even the family lawyer, just to make sure you really understand if there are any time critical decisions that you need to make and what are the consequences of not making them. So it's not saying you have to do something, but you have to have the knowledge about
You have to
what
know how much time you've got. Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Love that.
Which is
So I always talk about like a village, like your village or your A team or those people that you put into your close circle, and they can have different roles, but one of the people in your village is those trusted professionals. So you touched on an accountant. So an accountant's going to help you work out if there are any time critical things, the tax implications if you go over that. And it might actually be you don't need to pull the trigger on anything, but you need to, timestamp or what was something worth when you got it, or, there might be just some things to be noting, I guess, along the way. So we've got an accountant going to help from that perspective. Who are the other people that might be able to help you making, if you've received something and you don't know what to do, where to go next?
Yeah. So I would be also talking to your own estate planning lawyer around how this inheritance impacts your own estate, where you want to hold this money? Is it in your personal name? Did you receive it through a trust? What does that mean? How do you need to interact with that? And I always love it if you can get your A team or your village talking to each other as well, or, having cohesive conversations between them, because, something that the accountant is an expert in may have an impact on what the advice the lawyer is going to give you. And this is why you really want them working cohesively.
Yep. And that can take out, imagine you're in a stressful position and they're talking this lingo and then you're trying to relay it to somebody else. It can get a little bit mixed up as well. So if you do have professionals, you can get them to talk to each other, have you included, but so everyone's hearing the same stories, strategies, we're all on the same page.
Yes, that will save you a world of pain, let me tell you. Financial advisor around how you might evaluate the options that you have. So for a lot of people, it's like, okay, what do I do with this money? And again, slow down to make better decisions. So, do you want to pay off debt? Do you want to put it toward education? Do you want to just, throw caution to the wind and go on a bougie holiday and buy yourself a new car, whatever? Is it something that you want to invest? Do you want to pass it on to the next generation already? Because there are a lot of people, who are receiving funds now and they're in their late, 60s or 50s. They're like, I'm good. I'm established. It's actually the kids that I'm worrying about, and they want to pass it on, again, with the warm hand. So it's going down the chain. So we've got your financial advisor, accountant, the lawyer. Financial coach is a great one to start with. If you've not handled money like this before, if you're having some emotional responses, if you're feeling really overwhelmed about going out and finding the accountant, the lawyer, the financial advisor, your financial coach is like your personal cheerleader, translator, money expert in your corner, just to really hold your hand and give you that confidence as you navigate this new brave world. And that's such a significant piece of feedback that I get, particularly with clients who are either, navigating a loss, either of a partner or have received funds, so maybe a parent, or are coming out of a separation and they're stepping into needing to manage and navigate money and are feeling really charged and emotional and overwhelmed by that. Having that coach in your corner to help you kind of navigate, validate those feelings, to help you make a plan of attack around what you're going to do, who you're going to get in your corner, is just so reassuring and comforting, and enables them to make really good decisions, really aligned decisions as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And when so much is going on, having that person that can bring it all together and go, right, these are the other pieces of the puzzle that you need, and how you find them is so, so valuable. Actually, I was Drew and James over on the retirement podcast. They actually did a great episode also about inheritances and the different tax. Like I know we touched on a little bit earlier, so I'll link that one in the show notes, because they talk about capital gains tax and all of those types of things that you should be considering, and that'll highlight as well why it's so important as early as possible to be talking to an accountant, your financial advisor, and all of that type of stuff.
Yeah, and find the people in your social circle that you can talk to about this. Like I said, I'm definitely observing a number of people who, are potentially getting like the warm hands early inheritance to, help get them established on the property ladder. Or, a lot of people who are navigating infertility challenges will often get support from family to pay for things like IVF rounds. I had a conversation with a friend recently who is in a really sound financial position because of the moves that their parents made very early, which is such a fortunate place to be in. And she was stuck in a job that she absolutely hated. She had a lot of sort of angst around, I've been working so hard and I'm not getting the time I want with my kids, but I don't know what to do, because there was this overarching thing that, like, because she'd been so lucky, she had to work really hard to prove that she deserved it. And I just said, mate, like, acknowledge it, be really grateful of it, use it to do good in this world. And one of the best ways that you can use it to do good is to live a life well lived. So, spend that time with your kids, pursue the interests that really light you up. Do the job that makes you feel really passionate and has impact on the world. And that's a great way to honor the good fortune that you've had. There's no reward for doing penance because you got lucky. Like, who is that serving?
Because you needed to prove to everybody. I had a similar client that I was money coaching the other just recently, actually. So really similar situation. She had inherited money, but because she hadn't been working for, I think maybe 6 months or so for some mental health reasons and some job issues, she needed that time, and she'd taken 6 months out of the workforce and then had this inheritance that she felt so guilty about spending. And there was a friend getting married overseas in Europe, and I'm like, why aren't you doing the trip? And she's like, oh, what will people think? You know, I'm going on this European trip and, you know, I haven't worked. And I was like, who cares, for one? And they're probably not going to think it. But if you so once you get out of this headspace and it's, you know, a year or two down the track and you're back working, are you going to be like, I wish I just did that trip? Yes, you are going to. So let's just maybe flip it around the other way and go, what is all the good for your wealth and your future this money going to do? What is slicing off a small portion of it that's going to do something for you that adds, you know, we linked it back to her values, all of these types of things that she values. And yeah, we were like, okay, well, I think you need to kind of sit with this decision and let's swipe that away and pretend that that's gone and the trip's done. How do you feel about that? How do you go with your sleep at night test? Are you feeling, let's put yourself in those shoes. Are you feeling guilty that you did that trip? Are you worried what people are thinking? She's like, no. So we went through all of the exercises to kind of get to the, okay, and then how does this feel just having this amount of that money left? She's like, okay, pretty good. So it's a big, there's lots of layers to it, and there's lots of complexity that you need to sit with, and you need to have those moments where you can just sit with the decisions and think, okay, build that flexibility in that you can do things in stages, and they don't all have to be those knee-jerk reactions that we think is for the best because of what people will think of us, what we'll think of ourselves. As long as it passes your sleep at night test and is part of your value system, I think it's something great to do with that.
Absolutely. So just recap, I think there's such good insights there. Take a breath, take your time, let it sit. You know, if you're rushing to make a decision, there's a high probability you're rushing in the wrong direction. So really just slow it down, and then make a plan that's really aligned to your values around what feels good, what feels right, what reflects on the things that you really care about, and then get that expert advice to help you execute on that plan, and even just to help you to weigh up your options as well, because often you are kind of going, oh, you know, do I pay off the mortgage, or should I be investing? Like, what's going to maximize wealth, or what's going to be the best decision long term? You can honestly send yourself crazy. So go get the advice and get the numbers and overlay that with values and emotion as well.
Yeah, because it's always going to be the best financial way to do something on a spreadsheet, right? But it has to actually help you sleep at night, get closer to your goals. So, you know, if there's a few different options and you pick the one that ticks as many boxes, it doesn't have to be the one that actually is the best financial decision. It has to be the one that sits the best for you. But I guess one thing you touched on before is the amount of this money, wealth that's changing hands, is probably only going to a small amount of hands if we kind of think about the people that will potentially be getting inheritances. What do we do if we're not those people that are getting inheritances? You know, I guess there's two conversations there. Is if we think it's on the cards for an inheritance, we never want to rely on it, right? Because so many different things can happen for those people's financial decisions, aged care, like lots can throw that out. So we never want to rely on it. But so I'd like to touch on kind of that and what do you do if you're not going to be getting one? But it's an interesting conversation to have with clients and people, because a lot of the time I'll be talking to about their financial plan, and they'll say things like, oh, they don't want to say it out loud, and they're like, oh, I will be getting an inheritance. And I'm like, it's okay to talk about it. You know, we're not counting on it. It's a fact of life that if your parents or somebody close to you has wealth and you are going to be a beneficiary, you know, we're able to talk about it. It doesn't mean we wish that, but it is a very hard thing to kind of bring up. And I just feel people tense up when they have, like, you know, they're about to share it. But yeah, so let's talk about what happens if this isn't on the cards for you.
Yeah, because it It feels like everywhere, everyone's getting help. I know I've heard that from lots of clients. I hear it socially, people commenting about it. And it can really feel like, God damn it, I'm the only one who has to do this all by myself. And you can really spiral into that victim mindset. And that can kind of be a bit of a crux to not do anything. And so um, a couple of things. How do you manage that envy? How do you manage that frustration? First, just acknowledge it. And they're very real. They're very normal like things to feel. Don't shame yourself for it. Just like let yourself feel it. And then try and reframe it by focusing on yourself, on the things that you can actually control, focusing on your long-term goals, building your own financial independence. And I think that's something that worries me a little bit, with there being so much commentary these days around the challenges and the expense of housing in Australia, because it's a different story depending where you live. Like my youngest brother just bought a place up in Western Queensland, and the total value of what he purchased was less than the deposit I paid on my first apartment in Sydney, because the markets are just so vastly different. So, home ownership is available, but it just may not be where you want it to be, which is a hard truth about here in Australia. And then I think the second thing is really just focusing on how can I make the best of the resources that I have? How can I build wealth for myself from scratch? It is achievable. It is doable. I think it is absolutely harder than it was for the generations before, where you could kind of just wake up one day and be like, cool, gonna save a house deposit. I might just like, cut back on a few things and knuckle down for a year and we're going to be golden. No, these days it is absolutely a marathon and not a sprint. But things like investing, financial education, wealth creation has never been more accessible than it was before. And really reframe that to there's never been a better time for the average person to create wealth. Find ways to make money. It's so much easier to start your own business, to have multiple streams of income. It's never been easier and cheaper to invest before. So really focus on what financial skills do I need to build in terms of my knowledge and understanding. How do I make a plan that is aligned to my values, to my view of what I want to create in life? Who are the people I need around me? And then get cracking, because it is absolutely something that you can achieve, but it is going to be something that you need to be thoughtful and practice daily to make a reality.
Yeah, I love that you pointing that out, that it never has been easier to invest and to get into the market with small amounts and to learn increase your financial knowledge and then take control of your own situation. So yes, there's lots of things that are challenging, but those are all within your control, which is so empowering. I find when I'm talking to parents these days, it can be pretty common for them to feel pressure to invest, either have enough wealth to pass on properties, home deposits, or whatever. And they might be considering, how do they invest or save from their kids for quite a young age. One thing I always encourage, I love that as a financial goal, and that's a value to them. So absolutely have that in your plan. But one thing I encourage is to put your own oxygen mask on first. If you are struggling, you saving and investing for the kids isn't going to help your overall situation. If you have a roof over your kids' head and food on the table, you're doing amazing things for them, and you can be talking to them. The biggest impact you can have is on their money mindset. So the conversations, healthy conversations about how you manage money and how money works and all of these types of things doesn't cost you anything. So you don't have to necessarily be saving or investing for them. You can be making a really big impact in their financial lives and how the trajectory of their financial lives will go purely from those conversations.
I could not agree more. And as you say, it's really noble to want to do that for your kids, but not at your own detriment. That's going to be far worse long term, and making sure that you, sometimes we overdo it for our kids. And in that we actually disable them. We don't actually teach them the skills, the value of money, the mindset, the ability to set a goal, make a plan, and actually execute it. And that's, great. We might be giving them a house, but they've got no idea how to then pay that off, or to build up other wealth, or to set their kids up for the future. So I think, as you say, that ability to help them form a really healthy relationship with money, and then also role modeling to them the skills around, getting a job, being employable, being someone that people want to hire, or teaching them how to start a business, how to spend less than they earn so that they've got money aside that they can save and invest, how to set goals and align a strategy to them. That is a gift that keeps on giving. That is one of the greatest gifts that you can pass on.
Yeah, and it might be that you're not getting an inheritance. You're not counting on that. You're pretty confident that that's ruled out. It might be a value of yours that you want to make sure that you can, have that in your wealth plan, so that maybe you're going to be the first in your family to create intergenerational wealth.
Love that for you. Yes.
That would be an amazing thing to do. But if you're going to do that, you also want to set them up with the skills to manage any potential money that they're going to get. I would say, generalizing again, that, boomers leaving money for millennials, potentially we haven't seen a lot of conversations around money between those two generations. So that's something that we could potentially change going forwards, that, we are having those conversations with our kids on how to manage money, and we have maybe a healthier mindset. We have access to more information and resources that we can encourage them to also be then learning themselves. But I haven't really seen too much of that in that crossover where this wealth is coming from.
Yeah, and it's actually like a disaster waiting to happen, this fact that there is this massive transfer about to happen, and only 33% of families have actually had a conversation about it. And it's not about being like, yo, mom, dad, what you leaving me?
Yeah. How much am I getting? Do I actually need to save for a house, or you got me sorted?
I ain't saying she a gold digger, but but the problem is that, one, there might not be a will in place. So you're just leaving behind an absolute proverbial shit show for your family to clean up. Awesome. Thanks for that. There's a lot more blended families than before. And that creates complexity and impact. Then it's around like, when is, what do you want to happen? And the estate plan is so much more than like, where did all the assets go at the end of the day? A lot of important conversations around, what kind of healthcare do you want at the end of your life? If you lose your ability to make decisions, mum or dad, how do you want us to look after your house, your estate? How do you want decisions to be made on your behalf? Where are all these documents?
Important documents.
Where are they? Who is your lawyer? Who is your accountant?
Yeah.
How do you want things to play out?
It's such a gift to give people knowledge of your wishes, so they're not just guessing and then all the pressure is on them. I think it's just such, as difficult as these conversations are, they're so important that we know the legacy that, and maybe there are some kind of wishes and things that they have with money that's changed hands, or maybe it is their wishes for aged care and things. But these are conversations that we have to have, and they're very difficult, but they need to happen.
They need to happen. So if you need to have that conversation and haven't had that conversation, the first thing that you want to do is make time and space for it. So don't do it reactively or when emotions are heightened. Not a good idea. Second, frame the conversation. So in the example where it might be you talking to your parents, frame it around, look, I want to make sure that, you are getting a little bit older. A lot of your peers aren't in the best health. What I want to do is make sure that you get the best care, that your wishes are met, that I, do right by you and really support you in the event that, you're either unwell or you pass away. So can you talk to me about, what you want to happen in the event that you're sick, or if you pass away, where do we go to find those documents? What do you see happening with the home, with whatever? And really just frame it of like, I want to honor your wishes. I want to understand what you would like to see happen so that we can support you and we can play that role. And that's going to go a long way in having a positive conversation. It's probably not a one and done conversation. It's probably going to be an ongoing conversation.
It's going to have some layers, and yeah. And if this is the first time that you've spoken about these things, then maybe you do just touch on some of those higher level things until you're a bit more comfortable talking, and they, are a bit more comfortable to then open up and talk to different aspects of their plans. I definitely think that this is something like when you're building a healthy relationship with money and conversations with a partner. There's going to be times where it makes sense to have that conversation, and other times where it's now just time to park it and we'll pick this up another day.
Yeah. And again, don't hesitate to involve the help of professionals. So, maybe you go along with them when they're chatting to their estate planning lawyer, or they're having a catch up with the financial planner or accountant, if they have those people in their life. Maybe they do have some wishes that if they pass on money, that it stays within the bloodline, So talking about what structures need to be in place and what they want to happen there is not an unreasonable conversation.
Yes, because if they've got really specific wishes like that, they might not know that that's actually something that needs to be documented, and that it can't just, it's like, okay, cool, Mum, I know you want me to do that, but you actually have to put that somewhere legally for me to be able to carry out that wish. So the earlier that we can have conversations, I think, the easier things are going to be in a really, really emotionally heavy time. But this has been so great to dive into, Betsy. I'm so thankful for you sharing all of your insights to our community. But before we wrap up, 2 things. I always like to ask people what they wish they knew about money 20 years ago. And then I'd love you to tell people how they can connect with you.
Okay. I had to be like, do the math. How old were you 20 years ago?
So I used to say your 20-year-old self, which you could just do your 20-year-old self. But then I interviewed someone who was like really young, and I was like, I don't think that would have been all that.
They're like, last week? Huh? No, that's a really good question. My 20-year-old self is pretty much almost, give or take a few years, 20 years ago.
20 years ago,
yeah. Back then I wasn't even in banking. I didn't know I was going to have this finance career. So 2 things I would tell myself is get really clear on what makes life rich for you and allocate your time and energy and resources into creating that and fostering that. And 2, I would say get intimate with your relationship with money and master that, because it drives your thoughts, your feelings, your behaviors drive your outcomes. It really creates your financial reality. The skills and the literacy are very, very important, but they're only part of the story. And until you get that inner clarity, you really can't build that sustained outer wealth. So you need to invest the time, and it won't be again one and done. It'll be like new layers. I unpeel new layers of my money story all the time as just different seasons of life come along. The way I thought about and even managed my money in my 20s has been vastly different to my 30s and entering partnership and parenthood. I'm starting to get elderly parents. We're having all these conversations. That's bringing in new layers again. Even going from being employed to a business owner has completely revealed new dynamics of a money relationship. So really spend the time getting to know that. If you'd like to connect with me, you can find me on Instagram at Betsy Westcott. You can find me on LinkedIn at Betsy Westcott. I've got a betsywestcott.com website and an Inner Money Journey, which is my coaching platform. So innermoneyjourney.com. You can find me there on TikTok, but I'm really crap.
Are you on TikTok? I don't
shouldn't even mention it. It's so bad.
I think I've got like 4 followers, and most of the time it's just my daughter on there doing reels, and I'm like, I hope she's not actually posting them. But if people are turning on TV as well, you're popping up. Is it Sunrise that you usually on Today's Show?
Yeah. Sunrise, and sometimes the morning show and Your Money, Your Life with Koshi, which is good fun. So yeah, a little bit I should have mentioned that actually.
Yeah, probably could have opened with that. Koshi, that guy.
That old guy is a legend. So on Channel 7 as look, I'm going to say it, your favorite finance girl.
Love it. Absolutely love it. I will tag your websites. We'll put that stuff in. I'll link the show that Drew and James did that dive into the tax and things on different assets. That's a really good one. But Betsy, thank you so much for coming on the Australian Finance Podcast. And I hope we have you back again very, very soon.
Gem, it has been an honor and a pleasure, and I would love that. I love the show, long-time fan, so I really had a fangirl moment when you invited me on. Thank you.
Well, you might be lucky enough to be interviewed by Owen next time, the
OG. Bring my A game.
Thanks for watching this episode of the podcast. If you want to hear more from us, you can get daily videos and podcasts on Rask's YouTube channel. Or if you want to enroll in a free course on investing, property, business, money, you name it, you can join over 34,000 other students and enroll in a free course on the Rask website. Simply head to www.rask.com.au and follow the prompts. Thanks for watching this Rask podcast.